Hey everyone, I just want to say a huge thank you to all of you for helping me reach 100 subscribers. I honestly couldn't have done this without your love, support, and constant encouragement. Every like, comment, and subscribe means a lot to me. Now let's keep this journey going. Our next target is 200 subscribers, and I know we can do it together. If you enjoy my content, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let's grow as a family. Thank you once again. Shanks had everything under control. He was going to rescue Ace before the Navy could make their move, keep Luffy safely out of danger, and reunite his family in the new world. There was just one problem. Luffy wasn't safe. Instead of waiting, instead of trusting the plan, Luffy did what Luffy does best. He charged straight into Impel Down, the most secure prison in the world, alone. Now Shanks isn't just racing the Navy. He's racing time, chaos, and his own reckless son before the prison turns into a graveyard. Because saving Ace was the plan. Saving Luffy? That was never supposed to be necessary. Disclaimer. This story do not belong to me. The author is When Your Kid Decides to Do a Prison Break by alymun, respect to author.
Chapter 21. Ace perched on the roof, studying the man napping in the courtyard, the man who in a different life may have been his father. He'd been carefully making notes since they'd arrived on this island, watching how Rayleigh interacted with Luffy and with Shanks. Imagining he was on the receiving end of his glare when he was telling off Shanks, that he was the one being cuddled and taught as Luffy ignored all personal space. He loved being part of the Whitebeard pirates, loved having Pops be his father, but there was a weird longing in his chest as he watched Rayleigh's interactions. He couldn't imagine what it would have been like to grow up with the man. Having someone to raise him and protect him. To have been part of a family from the very beginning. He was jealous of Shanks' casual interactions and relaxed state now that he didn't have strangers around, now that he had his paw around to watch his back. He was jealous of the way Luffy was able to befriend everyone with no effort. He could barely bring himself to be in the general vicinity, let alone actually speak to the man. Meanwhile Rayleigh was walking through the castle with a babbling Luffy dangling from his arms. You know, your mom used to stalk people from above as well. Always perching in trees, masts or roofs. Woman was like a cat. Came Rayleigh's voice from behind him and Ace squawked in surprise, tripping over his feet as he turned and landing on his ass. Rayleigh smiled. That was all Roger. Ace hissed and tried to gracefully stand back up. I'm not like him. He spat, glaring at the older man. All right then, Rayleigh said easily, tossing something at him. Ace looked down at the framed photo of that man and a smiling woman, gasping when he recognized several of his features. He'd never seen a photo of his mom before, and he blinked quickly as his eyes watered. Embarrassed, he glanced back up to see an empty roof. The Moby Dick was weirdly quiet for a ship so full of people. Marco sat in the crow's nest and tried to relax, but the tension on board was palpable. God, he missed Thatch. As annoying as the man's pranks had been, they had always lightened the mood and been good for morale. He eyed Pop's chair and winced at the angry waves of hockey that were emanating continuously. The man was furious and even the fight with Kaido had not been enough to cheer him up. The next time they saw the Red Hair Pirates would be interesting indeed. The hard thing was that Marco was thankful of their actions. While he had been fully prepared to go and fight for his brother, to risk his life to free him, he had known there was going to be a heavy toll. They were the Whitebeard pirates. They were strong and loyal, but Pops wasn't a healthy young captain anymore and the Marines were full of new, strong and violent men. He shuddered to think of how many of his brothers would have been hurt or killed, and there was a part of him that suspected his father planned on sacrificing himself and going out in a blaze of glory rather than waste away. So yeah, he was glad that Shanks had stepped in and spirited his brother away. He understood that part of Pops would always see Shanks as the mischievous young boy that used to follow around a young Marco, but he wished his father would look up and realize that boy was now a strong man who deserved some respect. He understood the red-haired pirate's rage, but still he was dying to know what was happening, to know his brother was healing and safe. Marco stilled as his hockey picked up an approaching figure and he transformed, flying over the sea until he picked out the familiar form of Jinbei, breaching as he felt Marco. Permission to come aboard? Jinbei asked. Of course Jinbei. But we aren't the best company at the moment. Marco warned. Jinbei laughed. Well, I have some information that might lift your spirits, information about a little Spitfire. You know something about Ace. Marco brightened up. Thank the seas. He took off to warn Pops about the approaching man, praying that the news would help. Pops, Jinbei is here with news. Jinbei, my old friend, I was worried about you. We heard the Marines have revoked your warlord status. Jinbei waved off the hovering crew members and settled down in front of Pops. Yes, they were not very happy with me escaping Impel Down. Pops frowned. They had you in Impel Down. Yes, since I refused to join them in their war against you. I was lucky enough to share a cell with Ace and help make his time there less trying. Marco moved closer. Was he okay? They didn't hurt him too badly while he was there. He asked concerned. Not while I was there. Mainly they taunted him, but he was already beaten up and injured. He insisted he was fine, but I could tell he was starving and hurting from being chained against the wall. Marco fretted, wishing he could check the young man over, but relieved to know that Hongo was one of the best doctors around. And then that red-haired brat get involved. Pops said grumpily. Marco winced and Jinbei looked at the captain disapprovingly. I'm assuming you mean Emperor Shanks, in which case I will remind you that your disrespect to him has already caused you trouble. Pops grumbled to himself but nodded. And no, Emperor Shanks did not get involved then. Actually, we were informed that a rookie, Straw Hat Luffy, had broken into the prison. A rookie? A rookie broke into Impel down. Marco gaped in horror. Not only broke in, but ran wild through the whole prison. Turns out he's Ace's younger brother and he came to save Ace. Unfortunately, by the time he reached our cell, Ace had been escorted out, 5 minutes earlier in fact. The kid didn't even hesitate. Despite being trapped and gassed, he found allies and broke us out of our level. Garararara, Whitebeard started laughing. What a cheeky brat. Maybe we should meet this rookie. After all, if he's Ace's brother then he should be one of my sons. Whiteboard was confused to see the flare of anger in Jinbei's usually serene face. He's not in need of a new father figure or captain. That's what they all say. Pops, Marco hissed, elbowing Whitebeard harshly. So the rookie broke you out and then what happened? Jinbei shot another glare at Whitebeard but continued his story. We fought our way out. Impressive that the kid was able to reach strong allies to help get out again. Whitebeard nodded. The kid actually fought the vice warden, and held off Magellan so that everyone else could escape. Then the red-haired pirates showed up. They had rescued Ace and learned of the prison riot. I still don't understand why Shanks cared. Marco said confused. He has his ties to Ace though, I hate to admit it. Probably saved the kid for him. Whitebeard said grudgingly. Jinbei thought of how the Emperor had been around Luffy but held his tongue. No need to correct all his assumptions. Where are they now? There's no sign that they managed to get under the red line before the Marines blocked the route. Where they are is not your concern. Ace is safe and healing. You were told that he would return when he was ready to, and until then stay in your own territory. Jinbei cautioned. I am an Emperor of the Sea, who are you to tell me what to do? I thought I was your friend. And I am warning you. If you keep pushing Emperor Shanks, you will not like what happens. Trust in your relationship with Ace and respect your allies. Don't make enemies you don't need. Now Whitebeard, I have to go warn my crew that we are no longer safe from Marines. I trust that you will think of my words. Jinbei nodded to Marco as he rose and moved to the rail. I still want that straw hat brat. It will make Ace happy. Whitebeard said to Marco, who swore, smacked his captain and retreated back to the crow's nest, leaving his pops pouting on an empty deck. Sabo was losing his mind. No, scratch that, Sabo had just regained his mind. It had been 4 days since he had read the news about a prison break involving Straw Hat Luffy and Fire Fist Ace, and the sudden influx of memories had knocked him on his ass. Seriously, even after his 3-day coma, he still had an agonizing migraine, but he refused to take any meds. He deserved the pain. He needed to find his brothers, needed to beg for their forgiveness and reassure himself that despite his failings, both brothers were okay. He had been ready to race out there and track them down, but Dragon had insisted he stop and think first. Insisted restrained him when he had made to board a ship. Dragon had reminded him that he had no idea where his brothers were and forced him to get checked over by their doctor. But now it had been a whole day and there was still no news on where to find them. Koala had told him that Eva had broken free at the same time and was on his way to headquarters, that he might have an update for him if he could only be patient. But how could he be patient now that he knew what he was missing? The one bright side he had was that a member of his baby brother's crew was with a group of revolutionaries and he had been able to talk to her on the Den. Nico Robin had refused to give him details without confirmation of their bond, but she had told him about how he had saved her several times, about his love for adventure, his strength and conviction to help others follow their dreams. He wanted to cry at the thought of his crybaby little brother fighting to make sure everyone was free. So now he was digging through their archives for any and all information about either of his brothers. He remembered the first time he read the reports on Straw Hat. Remembers being impressed and annoyed by the rookie who was running through the Eastern Paradise, causing chaos and making enemies with no strategy. Now rereading how Luffy had fought Arlong. Thank you Koala for detailing that particular asshole's strength, battled Baroque Works and Crocodile, fought CP9 and declared war on the world government. Well, his rooms needed some reconstruction. He wasn't surprised that his dumb-ass twin brother had picked a fight with an emperor, remembering how much Ace wanted to make his own name and show that he was strong. But reading about how he had joined the Whitebeard pirates was a shock. The terror of knowing that he had been captured and had faced execution almost sent Sabo in a tailspin. It was Dragon himself that had reminded him that both of them had escaped and were in hiding. If the government had found them, it would be immediate news, with them desperately in need to save face in the whole debacle. Eva is here, came the shout through headquarters, and Sabo flung himself out the door and raced to the main hall. He didn't bother with apologies as he shoved his way to the front of the group, ignoring a bemused dragon and dragging Eva into the nearest secure room. Sabo boy, I was told you were in a calm. That's not important Eva, I need you to tell me everything about Luffy right now. Was he okay? Did he get hurt? Did he get enough food and rest? Was he healthy? Did he talk about himself? Where was he going? Was he with Ace? Sabo shot out rapidly. Sabo, you have to give him the chance to answer. Dragon said Riley from the doorway and Sabo flushed. Right, sorry Eva, tell me everything. Sabo implored and Eva happily began telling the story from when the Den had picked up an intruder in the prison. The story took hours and Sabo was proud of himself for only breaking down 4 times. Seriously, if Magellan was still alive, Sabo would have had to hunt him down and slaughter him. Anyways, Strawboy was still unconscious when we departed with Fire Fist hardly leaving his side, but the doctor was sure he would come to shortly. I was supposed to call with updates on his Kree. You have their Den number. Why didn't you say that earlier? Sabo said, snatching the paper from Eva's hand and bolting to the communications office. A second later he burst back in again, bowing deeply. Thank you for saving my baby brother's life. That debt will never be forgotten. The door slammed again. What just happened? Eva said, confused, and Dragon sighed as he filled in his old friend. Chapter 22. Rayleigh whistled a song softly while he stirred the pan, smiling at the quiet appearance of Ace. He was glad that he had picked up a fair amount of cooking skills in his life, as he had learned that the smell of food was the only surefire way of getting the boy to stay in his vicinity. This was his best friend's son, no, his brother, his soulmate's son, the boy he would have helped raise had life been kinder, and yet he was unable to even have a discussion with him. He wanted to curse Roger, curse him for choosing Garp to care for the boy, curse him for not giving him the option to protect the last piece of Roger that existed. Maybe having something to live for would have kept him from falling into the pit of despair. But maybe Roger was right. After all, he had dropped the ball with their older kids, abandoned them and disappeared into the bottle for years. It was only their tenacity and training that had kept them alive, and sheer luck that they had forgiven him when he had finally sobered up. Not to mention the sheer number of Marines who had chased after him until he had faded from notoriety. Drunk as he was, he had had many close calls. So yes, he probably would have failed Ace even more than Garp had. Still, the decision hurts. Well, he couldn't change the past, but he wouldn't let any more time go to waste. He wanted nothing more than to hug the stuffing out of the kid and tell him all about his parents, but knew nothing would drive the kid away faster. Thankfully he had some experience on what to do. This wasn't his first semi-feral child after all. He thought fondly of when the crew first adopted Little Blue. The 6-year-old street rat had taken months to trust that they really didn't mean him any harm. Rayleigh turned off the stove and split the food in 2 bowls. Ace went to grab one as usual, but this time he pulled it away slightly, flicking his eyes at the table. Ace hesitated, baring his teeth, but when his stomach growled loudly, he reluctantly pulled out a chair. The closest to the door and furthest from Rayleigh, but still it was a start. Other days the boy had just bolted. He slid the bowl across the table and enjoyed the 5 minutes it took the kid to scarf down the food and disappear from the room. 6 hours till dinner. Ray mused out loud as he continued eating. Luffy was bouncing in excitement, seriously bouncing. Shanks watched exasperated as the kid rebounded off the wall, dropping to the ground and back up to the ceiling. He carefully snagged the kid's shirt as he went to fly past and placed him back on his feet. Just because Hongo said you didn't have to stay in bed anymore, doesn't mean you were back to normal, Anchor. But Shanks, we found Nami and Frankie. They're okay and they don't hate me. He beamed, vibrating in place. Shanks laughed with his kid. I told you they wouldn't blame you, stupid. I'm glad Frankie thought to get in touch with Iceberg since I don't have any connections on Vegapunk's home island. Yeah, Frankie's real smart. Did you know he's a cyborg? He makes super things for Sunny, like a shark sub, and cool cannons and the coup de burst. And Ice Guy was pretty cool. He let us stay after we went to Ennie's lobby and we threw this cool party with everyone. Shanks winced a bit at the reminder of Ennie's lobby and quickly moved the topic along before he thought too much about it. And your navigator ended up on a sky island. That must have been a surprise for her. She probably is having lots of fun. When we were in Skypia, Nami learned how to use the waver, and after we beat up the god guy, we stole all the treasure from inside the giant snake. Beat up go inside the giant snake. No, you know what, it's fine. Yep, just another day in the life of Anchor. I'm impressed you guys got up there at all. It took Roger years to figure out the entry to the Sky Islands. Did you go through the High West Gate? Nope, we went up on the knock-up stream and flew. Nami and Usopp were so scared that we'd fall to our deaths, but it was awesome. Don't ask, don't ever ask. Damn it, do I ever learn. Shanks muttered to himself. Shishishi. Luffy pulled Shanks out of the room, eager to start exploring now that he wasn't stuck in bed. Shanks reluctantly followed, not quite ready to accept that Luffy was okay to run around despite Hongo releasing him. At least they'd made him agree to stay within the castle's walls unless accompanied by someone else. Still, he was desperately trying to think of a distraction that would allow him to talk Luffy into cuddles instead. That's when there was yelling and a burst of flame coming from the sitting room. He automatically grabbed Luffy's arm, trying to move him behind him so he could face the threat. Unfortunately, Luffy just stretched his arm out as he bounded into the room. Shanks cursed and rushed in to find a flaming ace, yelling some truly creative curse words into the shaking Den. Luffy snorted. What's asterisk mean? Oi, nope, bad word. Shanks scolded. Oh shoot, I didn't see you Lu. It doesn't mean anything. Don't repeat any of that. You're not allowed, Ace rushed, turning away from the Den. Luffy pouted. But you got to say it. Stupid Ace. Yeah, stupid Ace, Shanks said glaring. It's a secret older brother word Lu. No little brothers allowed, okay? Ace implored. Ah, mystery word, Luffy said, nodding and already losing interest. Ace, why is the Den crying? Luffy. Came a quiet, choked whisper. Ace bit back another curse and turned back to the snail. Hey, you don't get to talk to him. You don't even get to mention his name. He snarled. It's nothing bud. Just someone playing a really stupid prank. But we're never going to hear from them again. He spat out and went to slam the line down. No wait. Fine, I'll go but don't hang up. Nico Robin is here and would like to talk to her captain. Came the frantic response and Ace hesitated for a second, which was long enough for Luffy to grab the snail. Ace, I wanna talk to Robin. Stop hogging the Den, whined Luffy. Shanks looked at Ace concerned, wondering if he should grab the kid and get him out of there, but Ace sighed. Fine, he said harshly. But I'm staying right here and you are going away. We will talk to Nico Robin only. RRROOBBIIINN. Ah Captain, I'm glad to hear your voice. With the news coup calling for a manhunt for you and your brother, I was expecting to read about your capture. Shanks wanted to growl at the implication he couldn't protect his kid, but Luffy broke into giggles. Classic Robin. Are you okay? I was so worried about you and then I couldn't get back to Sabayati to meet everyone. But I'm glad you are with my dad and safe now. Shanks flinched at that but tried to keep his face blank. Despite his feelings on the matter, the man was Luffy's father and that wasn't going to change. Though what had that man ever done for his kid? Gave him to the crazy ass Garp and ignored him for 17 years, that's what. He doesn't get to come along now and take Shanks' role. Sees, even hearing his kid call someone else dad sent a bolt of pain through him. Meanwhile, Robin happily chatted with her captain, making sure to gloss over her ordeal while watching the young blonde male who had slid down the wall by the door. He was staring avidly at the Den and she watched how he soaked in every word while silent tears streamed down his face. She didn't quite trust him and his claims of being Luffy's brother, but unless he was a fantastic actor, he had some emotional connection to her captain. And then Shanks found Nami and Frankie. So now we just need to find out where Sanji, Chopper and Usopp ended up. But we're gonna spend the next 2 years training so that I can protect everybody next time. Okay. Shishishi oops, Zoro said that I should say so. We can protect each other, but he's still stuck in bed and all bandaged up like a mummy. So he can't do the protecting right now. Luffy continued to chatter away and she smiled. Impel down haunted her dreams and honestly the very thought of the prison made her mind freeze. Hearing that her captain had not only broken in and out, but released prisoners and destroyed everything in his way had been shocking, but also sent a wave of safety over her. She knew that Luffy would fight for her as he'd already shown, but now she knew there was no limits to what he'd do for those he called his. He'd not only do the stupid, he'd do the impossible. Unfortunately their call had to end, the revolutionaries not permitting longer calls, and she reassured her captain that she understood they needed to become stronger. She hated the separation, but she agreed that she was well suited for what the Revs could teach her. They hung up and she studied the boy. You figured out his location during our talk, didn't you? Sabo wiped his cheeks and looked at her. I have an idea, yes. He's with the swordsman, and there is a logical location that Roronoa would have been sent and that red hair would have brought Luffy to. She sprouted extra arms and pinned him to the wall. And what do you intend to do with that information? Sabo didn't blink, just stared at her calmly. I intend no harm to him or Ace. They are my brothers and I would die for either of them. It was a mistake to try and tell them over the Den. I know how suspicious and protective Ace is, but I just couldn't wait any longer to hear from them. Now I need to go see them face to face, to explain what happened, and if Ace decides to kill me, I will let him. Robin studied him carefully. She was a good judge of character after a lifetime of being on the run, and she could feel his sincerity. Still, she wouldn't gamble with her captain's life. I will go with you, and if you have misled me, I will show you exactly why I am called the Devil Child. Buggy peered from the alley at the busy street. He scanned visually and with his hockey to pick out the various Marines in his vicinity. The last week, he had been contacting all of his people and preparing to get the news out. He had received the news from one of his sources that a prisoner had finally given his brother up. They had cracked under torture and revealed that Emperor Shanks had carried the prisoners away from the prison, but so far, Luffy's role had not been revealed. Thankfully the boy's unconscious state had kept him off the other prisoners' radar, and Buggy's flair for the dramatic had ensured the prisoners knew the escape was because of Buggy. Now it was time, and he was shaking. He reminded himself of exactly why he was doing something so suicidal. He needed to protect his little nephew and make up for his fuck-ups. He was doing this for his brother and for Luffy. Time to put on his flashiest show yet. He flew himself up on the platform, and hesitated. This was the place where he had almost killed his nephew, almost destroyed any hope for his relationship with Shanks. This was the place his dad died. He hadn't really thought of it last time, but now he couldn't stop thinking of his dad's last laugh before the Marines executed him. He felt sick. Shanks was right to say there was no fixing what he almost did. Deep breath, and he dropped one of his hidden buggy balls, releasing a cloud of smoke that pooled around his feet. The second one he tossed up as it emitted colorful sparks. There was a gasp from the square as people finally noted his presence above them, and he let out a loud laugh. Lucky people of Logatown, are you ready to meet the man who will be king of the pirates? The man who not only escaped from Impel down, but freed hundreds of his future pirate subjects. The man who summoned an emperor of the sea to his side and who grew up under the tutelage of the former pirate king, Captain Gold Roger. The flashiest man on the seas, I, Buggy the Clown, will find the One Piece and be king of the pirates. 22 years ago, Captain Gold Roger, king of the pirates, surrendered to the Marines in order to spread his message through the world. His life was ended in this very spot, and now I claim this as the spot where the new king is revealed. By now there was a crowd of people surrounding the platform, and Buggy forced himself to continue, to not think of how similar the view was on that fateful day years before. His people were spread throughout the crowd, starting up cheers for Buggy, and now there were Marines flooding the area. Buggy gave a little prayer of thanks that Smoker was no longer based in Logatown and grinned tauntingly. The Marines are helpless to stop me. I've already proved that by allowing them to lock me inside their most secure prison. It took me mere months to flashily escape and show them they cannot contain the amazing, flashy Buggy the Clown. Rise up and join the man who will reign over the world. Right, time to go, Buggy thought as the Marines encircled the base. He slid down one of the poles and tossed a light-up ball at the ground. It emitted a bright flash, blinding the opponents long enough for him to duck through an opening. He tossed another ball at the Marines that released a thick sticky substance, trapping them in their place. He laughed as a blade sliced through him, slapping a pin on the Marine that emitted an electric shock strong enough to knock him over. He dodged into the crowd, and a second later another Buggy ran across the other way. The Marines froze, unsure what was happening, and the Buggies cackled as they dodged the crowd, laughing when the people realized their feet had been encased in wax and they weren't able to move out of the way of the furious Marines. Now came the riskiest part of his plan. Buggy grit his teeth but let 5 of the remaining Marines block him into a dead end. He watched as they approached, mocking him, and hoped that his gamble would pay off. The Marines ordered him to lay down and interlock his hands, but he ignored them. He held their gaze as they raised their swords and they swung. Suddenly there was a loud clang and their swords clattered to the ground. Buggy felt a wave of relief as a glowering crocodile lowered his hook, and knocked out the rest of the Marines with a wave of hockey. On the other side of the square, another Buggy was dancing as a cloud of sand sent a group of Marines in a violent twister. They moved to meet back up in the square before the unlikely group disappeared, heading to the harbor as all the paths were blocked by walls of wax. Buggy collapsed on the ship and fought back the urge to burst into tears. Well, his identity was out there, and he guaranteed he had infuriated the Marines enough that the name Straw Hat Luffy would fade in the background. He could no longer hide in obscurity. It was his time to shine, and damn it, he would be the flashiest pirate around and keep all eyes on him. Chapter 23. Ace groaned as Luffy begged to go out in the woods again. His younger brother was making up for the enforced bed rest with relentless quests for adventure and shore. There were many pirates who would love to go out with him, but since that call, Ace was struggling to let the kid out of his sight again. Come on, Lou. We went out this morning. Yeah, that was like a billion hours ago. Luffy flashed his puppy eyes. Ace snorted. More like 4. Seriously, I'm beat. But I'm bored. Maybe I can help. Came the laughing voice of Shanks from the doorway. Ben and Mihawk have insisted that we begin training now that Zoro is healed enough to begin. Finally, Luffy cheered, leaping at Shanks, who grunted as the direct hit in his gut. Do we get to fight the monkeys, blindfolded? Or sword guy? Or you? Shanks choked for a second. No. You get to sit and watch a demonstration of the different types of hockey. Luffy wilted. That's boring. I wanna fight. Shanks sighed, tucking the kid under his arm, and Luffy shot out a hand to pull a grinning Ace along. Luffy was plopped down beside a lounging Zoro and floating Piranha. He laughed and then immediately rolled over and settled himself into Zoro's lap. Ace watched, expecting the man to shrug him off, but Zoro just wrapped his arms around him and rested his chin on his shoulder. Ace narrowed his eyes and studied the two of them, not sure how he felt about his brother choosing to snuggle with someone else, but Zoro met his glare evenly until he huffed and sat next to them. Horo horo horo. Ahu knew that you could actually be cute. Look at you two, all cuddly and adorable. Piranha cooed. I am not cute. Crazy ass ghost witch. Zoro muttered but tightened his grip on his captain. Alright children, that's enough. Ben interrupted, drawing the focus back to the older men. Shanks was leaning against the wall cooing, while Mihawk perched on a stone, staring blankly at the group. Now I know Luffy and Zoro just learned about the different types of hockey, but how much do you know, Piranha and Ace? Piranha wrinkled her nose. Why would I want to learn to use hockey? Effort is so not cute, besides my ghosts keep me safe. Ace blushed. I know of it, but I never learned how to use it. Marco used to get mad that I wouldn't try. Said I was too reliant on my powers. He's right. Your devil fruit is powerful, but your enemies are just as strong, and there are plenty of powers that won't be affected by yours. Akainu's magma powers, for example, will overpower your flames, though your flames will work well against Aokiji. Still, his haki would allow him to battle you. Ben lectured. In Perona, your ghosts can't protect you from everything. A skilled haki user will be able to protect themselves from their power, and then you're vulnerable. Now Shanks and Mihawk are going to show you the different types. Ben waved over Shanks and helped tie a blindfold around his head. Alright haki. Bring it on, Shanks said, laughing. It isn't sporting to fight someone with a handicap. Mihawk said with a glare. I can still take you, asshole. Come on, Shanks said easily, and Ben sighed. Mihawk, it's a demonstration, not a fight. If you like, why don't you tie one of your arms back to make it even? I was talking about his missing brain. Mihawk grumbled but reluctantly drew Yuru and coated it with his armament haki. Shanks grinned and then casually dipped his body under the quick swipe of Yuru. The two men proceeded to dance across the courtyard with a blindfolded Shanks gracefully dodging every attack. Suddenly Shanks went on the offensive, coating himself in haki and using his arm and feet to drive Mihawk back. After a couple of minutes, Ben cleared his throat and ended the demonstration. Shanks released his blindfold and smirked at his friend before he stiffened and looked towards the bay. Someone is coming. They just entered my range. Small ship, containing 2 people. He turned back to the group and ushered the kids up. You 4 get inside, stay together and hide in the boys' room. Don't come out until I give you the all clear. Instantly 3 voices rose up in complaint and Shanks snarled. This is not up for debate, boys. Your only choice is if you go on your own or if I have to send someone with you. Ace, your brother and Zoro are still healing and I'm trusting you to keep them safe. Now go. Luffy still went to complain, but Shanks had uttered the magic words to activate Ace's overprotective side and he scooped the wriggly kid up. Shanks sent a wave of haki to his pa, who had been hanging out nearby, trusting that his father would watch over the kids for him. Another wave directed to his crew, alerting them to the threat, before he raced to see who was coming. Mihawk and Ben had already disappeared, making their way to the bay and preparing to face their unexpected visitors. Shanks studied the ship as it moved through the fog. From this distance he couldn't make out much, but he picked out 2 slight forms moving around. The brunette figure was standing at the front of the ship while a blonde scurried around. Mihawk sighed and gestured him back and he slipped back into the cover of the woods. The ship finally moored and they disembarked. What the hell do you think you are doing here? Mihawk spat as he glared at the duo. Do you really think I want to be here? Sniffed Boa Hancock. On this filthy island full of mindless apes. They're called human drills, Mihawk informed her. I wasn't talking about them. Hancock snarked back. You can tell the men lurking in the woods that they can come out. I will allow them to be in my presence if they stay out of my way. How kind of you, but I fail to see what business you could possibly have with me and why I should allow your presence. Don't assume it's anything to do with you or that you could stop me. You won't try because I am too beautiful. Now I am here to see my fiancé. And what poor soul thinks he's going to be married to you? Hancock giggled and blushed. Why, my beloved Luffy. Now bring me to him. There was a loud shout from the woods and then Shanks was there glaring at the 2 women. Fiancé. There is no way in hell you are going near Luffy. Hancock flung her head back and looked down her nose at the Emperor. You think you can keep us apart? We are soulmates and we will be together. Slave arrow. She shouted at the men only to freeze in shock when they both stared back in boredom. Impossible. I'm too beautiful to be rejected. Everyone wants me, she exclaimed angrily. Mihawk laughed. Maybe you need to meet more people because I assure you that there is a multitude of people with no interest in you. Do you really think I'd feel attraction to you, knowing you're after my son? Shanks drawled. Your son? Oh my, she giggled. You're Luffy's father. He didn't say. I can't believe it, me, meeting the parents and without having time to prepare. Listen here, I'm not letting you anywhere near. Hammock. Came a yell as Luffy flew into the clearing, slamming into Mihawk and sending the both of them rolling. Mihawk let out a string of curses as he threw Luffy off him, directly into the bay. Shanks would deny it later, but he let out a high-pitched shriek at the sight of his kid sinking like his namesake. Before he could think to move, there was a blur and the young swordsman was diving in the water and hauling anchor back to the surface where an exasperated Ben appeared, plucking the soaked boy from the water and kicking Mihawk, sending him in with a splash. Honestly, Shanks. He sighed as he knocked Luffy on the back a few times, causing him to cough up water. Shishishi, thanks Zoro. Luffy wheezed out. Marguerite, Hammock, what are you guys doing here? Oh no. Luffy, are you okay? We were worried about you, Luffy, and I wanted to see you again and make sure you were being looked after properly. Hancock said eagerly, reaching for Luffy. Absolutely not, Shanks began blocking her reach. Luffy, you idiot, yelled Ace, running into the area and forcing his brother behind him. I told you dummies to stop. Now they know we are here and we're not going to get any information. Perona snapped as she joined the group. Give me back my beloved. Hi Luffy, Marguerite chirped. He's not your beloved, Shanks yelled. Huh, you look like a wet cat. Zoro snorted as Mihawk dragged himself out of the water. Careful Roronoa, or I'll lose my benevolence. There was a loud whistle and everyone froze, turning to look at a glaring Ben Beckman. That's enough. Shanks, Mihawk, I'll remind you too that you are adults, so kindly act like it. Hancock and your friend, you are trespassing and I advise you to shut up and keep your hands to yourself if you care to keep them. And you four, he turned his glare on them and the group shrunk under his gaze. You were told to stay inside until you were given the all clear. Luffy gulped and stopped trying to get out from behind his brother. Explain boys, now. We were going to but then we got worried that you might need our help, so we were just going to come part way but then Luffy realized who it was and we had to come after him. Ace started. And how did he realize who it was if you guys weren't close? Ben questioned. Perona was using her ghosts to spy. Zoro said bored. Perona shrieked, sending a ghost through him and he fell over comparing himself to a worm. They made me do it. I only came along because you said to stay together and since they made us come out here, I thought having more information would keep us safer. I wanted to say hi. They're my friends. Luffy said cheerfully. Friends. He called us friends. My beloved is so modest. Hancock sighed dreamily. No, you're not good enough for him. Yelled Ace. He's too young to date. He's a baby. Snapped Shanks. The loud crack of a gunshot interrupted the rising argument and Shanks jumped in front of the boys, before realizing his first mate was holding the gun. Mihawk, escort your guests to the castle. We will deal with them after. The kids and us need to have a talk in private. Ben said firmly. Mihawk wisely didn't complain about being bossed around and glared at the kids before quickly waving the two women ahead of him as they moved away from the group. Shanks inched back a step from his angry first mate but Ben shot a hand out, gripping his captain's arm hard. Now there are several important things we need to discuss. Captain, why don't you start us off? Ben said sternly. Right, so first off, Anchor, you are way too young to be married. And what do you even know about her? Did she try to force you to do something cause I will kill her slowly? Do you even know about sex? And no, anyone but her. Actually no dating till you're 30. Shanks nodded firmly and then yelped as a hockey-coated fist smashed into his head. Ow, what was that for? Because you're an idiot. Ben snapped. Forget that and listen here kids. When we give you an order we expect you to obey it. If you have an issue with it we can discuss it but not if it is to do with your safety. You absolutely don't sneak around behind our backs and you don't spy on us. That is a gross betrayal of our trust. I don't care if you kids are adults with your own crews, we are still the parents and we need to know that you will follow directions. Parents. Perona mouthed to Zoro who shrugged. Second, Ben continued over their confusion. Luffy, just because you think people are your allies, doesn't mean they are. Flinging yourself into a gathering without proper care and planning is not okay. 1. You took out Mihawk, 2. You ended up almost drowning and 3. You positioned yourself in reach of the intruders who could have grabbed you before Shanks could have stopped it. And the rest of you just barged in after him. Think ahead, don't just throw away your advantages. And third, Shanks is right Luffy. You are simply too young to be in a committed relationship with someone. I know Hancock is very beautiful and alluring but you are not ready to settle down with anyone and she is quite vindictive and cruel when she is upset. It isn't safe to be with her. And please tell me someone told you about the birds and bees. Luffy nodded. Nami told me all about the bees and how they pollinate, polish the plants, including her trees so I can't catch them. Luffy continued. No Anchor, I meant. Nami said so. Ben sighed. Right, never mind for now. Ace laughed. He knows about sex. I told him when we were younger. Shanks snorted. And who taught you Firefly? I saw animals. Ace said defensively. Oh sees. Ben groaned, rubbing his temples. Okay group lesson later but we got off track. The important thing was the sneaking out and spying. So punishment time. The kids all groaned and Ace spoke up. Isn't the threat of a sex talk enough of a punishment? None of us want to hear it, seriously. Hey, I'll have you know that I've got some mad skills to pass on. Shanks smirked at the flushing, horrified kids. But Ben is right. You ignored a safety rule so now you have to face the consequences. You four are going to be cleaning the castle, starting with the kitchen. Luffy brightened and Ben hurried to interrupt. Zoro and Perona will do the kitchen. Luffy and Ace will start with the library. And someone will be supervising so don't get any more ideas. First though, let's go find out what that woman wants. And you. Shanks turned and yelled up a tree. Get down here and stop enabling the brats. Honestly you never would have let me get away with this shit. A grinning Rayleigh easily leapt down from the tree where he had perched and the kids jumped in surprise. Red, you asked me to watch them and I did. Besides you finally made me a grandpa and now it's my job to spoil them. Chapter 24. Mihawk was leaning against the wall and studying the two women in front of him. See what happens when you let red hair into your life, no peace and quiet. Suddenly there's people everywhere and unexpected visitors. What happened to the fear and respect? Hockey, did you know you have a bottle from the North Sea in here? I haven't had this brand in ages, it's so hard to find. Shanks shouted as he burst into the room, half the bottle already gone and Zoro firmly tucked under his arm. Mihawk scowled. Right, that happened. And how the hell did the asshole always track down his hidden stash? Zoro here, wandered off and found it in the back storage room, under some crates of old papers. Shanks continued as he pushed the glowering kid onto a couch. Luckily I was there to remind him that Hongo said he isn't allowed to drink on his meds. I didn't wander off, the hallway moved. Zoro insisted. And no medication has ever stopped me from drinking before. Shanks tsked. Rookie move, admitting that. Now Hongo is going to have to give you a lecture about it and he's going to make sure to talk to your doctor so it doesn't happen again. Hypocrite. Mihawk said quietly to him and Shanks shivered, thinking back to when Hongo caught him drinking shortly after losing his arm. Next thing you know there's no alcohol allowed on board when you get hurt. He took another gulp to try and forget the horror and turned back to the door. Hurry up guys. A complaining Perona stalked in, followed by a shoving Luffy and Ace, a disproving Ben and a grinning Rayleigh. Ben prodded Luffy and nodded at Mihawk. Right. Sorry I knocked you over sword guy. I gotta thinkin'. Plan, Ben reminded him. Right. Plan and aim and not let my exuberance get me in trouble. Luffy finished and grinned widely. Mihawk's lip twitched up and he hurriedly brought his hand up to cover it. He cleared his throat and gestured the kids to the couch. Hancock beamed, squishing Marguerite into the side so that Luffy could sit next to her, but a glowering Ace plopped down next to Zoro and yanked him on their laps, leaving Perona to perch on the edge of the girl's couch. Now Hancock, how did you know to come here? Shanks questioned coldly. I used logic. Hancock replied bored. When she didn't continue Shanks glared and tapped Griffin warningly. From Rayleigh obviously. Shanks looked at his dad in disbelief but Rayleigh seemed just as confused, shrugging and waving Hancock on. The news crew has released the news that you were the one who broke in and that idiotic clown has gone and drawn all the attention to himself. Obviously trying to divert attention from my suite. And obviously I knew Luffy was involved since I helped get him and Impel down in the first place. I knew that you hadn't crossed the red line from the Marines and Rayleigh has told me stories of your childhood on the Oro Jackson, so I knew that you grew up friends with Mihawk. I remembered how he reacted at Marineford and realized that he was likely the safest place for you to go. Once I got here I was able to sense your crew and knew I was right. Like I said, logic. The group stared at her for several seconds and Hancock sneered back. What the hell are you doing telling random people about my life? Shanks said, turning on his paw. She's not a random person. She's Shaggy's, well, kind of like her kid. Which now that I think of it makes her kind of like your stepsister. Rayleigh defended himself. Oh, for the love of Davy Jones. Stop. This family cannot get any weirder. That's it. No more. Sees we are becoming worse than Whitebeard. Shanks groaned but then his face brightened. Hey, that makes her Anchor's aunt. So no more of this beloved business. Shaggy is not my mother. Hancock protested, pouting when Rayleigh just raised a brow. Enough already. Worry about your family tree later when I am not forced to be present. Mihawk snarked. Hancock, I still don't see why you bothered to come out here. I told you, I wanted to check on Luffy. Last I saw of him, he was disappearing into Impel down alone. Next thing I hear there's an emperor involved and a clown claiming to be the mastermind. The Marines are hunting him and no one had any updates on his condition. Like it or not, I care for him. She sniffed. Shishishi, I told you I would be fine, Hancock. Hancock flushed and muttered under her breath as Ace and Zoro rolled their eyes. And now I'm going to get even stronger cause Papa Ray told me he would train me in hockey. He beamed. Hancock thought for a second and then nodded. In that case, I offer Rusukaina to you. It is safely in my territory so the Marines won't bother you, the comm belt will keep others out and there will be less chance of someone connecting you to Mihawk and Red Hair. Absolutely not. Shanks snapped. Red. Rayleigh said warningly and Shanks took a breath. Rayleigh waved Mihawk and Shanks out of the room and into the hall. Look Red, I know you don't trust her but I know her. She has an attitude but when someone earns her loyalty, she will do anything for them. She's already gone against her beliefs, going to Marineford in order to help him into Impel down. Exactly. She brought my kid into the most secure prison in the world and left him there without any allies. He almost died. And what would you have had her do? From the short time I've known the brat I know he would have gone there with her without her help. And probably been in a lot more danger. There isn't many people who would have been able to deter that boy and you know it. Shanks hissed, and started pacing angrily. I don't like the way she looks at him. Rayleigh laughed at this. Kid, that boy of yours couldn't be less interested in what she's offering and whatever she is, Hancock is not the type to force the issue. Even if she was, your brat can handle himself. But if you like I will have a talk with her about boundaries. And what's wrong with this island? With Mihawk, Red Hair, while I will allow you to stay, you know this isn't the best setup for him. There's too much happening here for any real training and that kid of yours has the attention span of well, you. I need time and space to train Roronoa properly and so does Rayleigh. This could be the solution. Mihawk spoke up. I know nothing of that island. How do you know it is suitable for him? Shanks asked, getting desperate. If you are that concerned Red, why don't you go check it out? Rayleigh said, exasperated. But, I can't go. Yes you can. In fact I insist on it. Think of it as a practice run because you're going to need to go for good soon. Shanks pouted but Rayleigh just ruffled his hair. Come on kid. Luffy is healing and ready to start training and the Marines have had to call off their blockade. You have your own territory and allies who need you. Meanwhile in the room, Ace was glaring angrily at the warlord. He is 17. What kind of sick person falls in love with someone who's so much younger than them? He yelled, aware of his baby brother happily chatting with the blonde and Zoro across the room. Perona stood by his shoulder nodding vehemently. The two of you is not cute. Ugh, and it is very hard for anything involving him to be not cute. Don't touch that, she suddenly shrieked over her shoulder at a surprised Luffy who had picked up her Kamashi doll. He dropped it and quickly backed away causing Zoro to glare at her. Perona sniffed and turned back to the Empress. Where was I? Oh yes, not cute, so don't go getting any ideas. He doesn't see people that way. So you are going to back off. He's decided you are his friend so I won't burn you to ashes but I am warning you. Be happy as his friend and stop trying to force it to be more. Or I am going to ruin those pretty looks that you are so reliant on. Hancock glared at the duo angrily and formed a heart with her hands. Slave. No, Ben said firmly from where he was lounging against the wall. Hancock looked at him and hesitated, slowly lowering her hands and Ben smirked back. Suddenly the door opened and Shanks stormed in again. Don't get comfortable warlord. First thing tomorrow you're leaving and taking me and my crew to Rusukaina. Luffy froze at this before turning and shooting out the window, ignoring the yells behind him. Disclaimer: this story do not belong to me. The author is, when your kid decides to do a prison break by alymun. Chapter 25. Luffy raced through the jungle, dodging trees and fighting back the horrible wave of loneliness. He remembered what Rayleigh said about hiding his presence and worked to focus his energy as he ran, not even noticing the human drills that fell to his presence. He only slowed as he came out onto the beach and saw the red force ahead of him. A wave of nostalgia took his breath away and there was nothing he wanted more than to board and hide away in his dad's cabin. But this wasn't his ship and you don't board someone else's ship without permission. So instead Luffy wearily sunk down on the sand and curled his arms around his legs. He didn't even know why he was so upset. He'd always known that Shanks wouldn't be there forever and that was a good thing. As future king of the pirates, he didn't want any help or favoritism from his emperor father. But he'd expected more warning before his dad left again. More time with his family, more of a struggle to leave him. But apparently Shanks was ready to leave him again. Apparently the regret was all on Luffy's side. Sees, how selfish could he be? His dad had dropped everything to come save his brother, and then gave up on any chance of secrecy to save him. He was an emperor, he had territory and allies to protect. There were friends and parties and adventures to have. Of course he was tired of spending weeks on an isolated island with him, laying around while he healed. It was boring, only having his dad around made it worth it. Luffy, came a hesitant voice and Luffy quickly wiped at his cheeks before looking up at Yasopp standing on the ship. Hey kiddo, thought that was you. What are you doing out here? Luffy shook his head and went to head back but Yasopp called out. Hey, why don't you come on board and keep me company for a bit? Ben put me on guard duty for pranking Snake earlier and I could use some entertainment. Luffy hesitated but he wasn't quite ready to go back and face everyone again so he latched his arms onto the railing and flung himself onto the ship. He could feel Usopp's gaze and knew the sniper would pick up on the signs of recent crying. The man tutted and then disappeared below deck. A few minutes later he reappeared and tossed Luffy a bag of chocolate. Bonk Punch always has a stash of these but I figured you could use them more. Luffy smiled gratefully and happily unwrapped some. What was your prank? He asked as he chomped down on a chocolate caramel. Yasopp began talking, telling him about his latest pranks, about their most recent challengers, about his new ammo and Luffy felt some of his tension disappear. It was nice to sit and listen to stories again but it also felt wrong. Do you hate me for losing Usopp? He interrupted, longing for the familiar presence of his sniper. Of course not Anchor. I know he's out there somewhere fighting to make it back to you. My boy is strong. Besides it's not your fault. Usopp knew what the life of a pirate entails and he chose to take those risks. It's in his blood. He is capable of making his own choices and I gave up any right to judge them. Why didn't you ever go back for him? Luffy, Yasopp said softly. Hey, look at me bud. Yasopp said, squatting down in front of him and guiding his head up. I loved Usopp and his mother. I tried really hard to be the man they needed but the truth is, I was a lousy husband and father. There's no excuse for it. All my love for them and I was still miserable in that little town. Banshina knew it too. She pushed me to join Shanks. Said that if I didn't, resentment would destroy our relationship anyways. So I left, and only visited when we were in the area. It was meant to be temporary, but then a couple years later she told me about a man she met and loved. She said that he wanted to be a father to Usopp and that she was happy. So I stayed away, left my role of husband and father and for the first time I was free to live the life I wanted with no regrets. But how do you just leave and not come back? I'm a pirate, I'm selfish. Yasopp swallowed. It's not easy for any of us to leave the ones we love behind. But sometimes it's the best way to keep them safe, like Captain and you. Me, I'm just a coward. I thought of visiting Usopp but I couldn't bring myself to go back and see her with someone new. Besides he had a new father and I would have only brought him problems. Or at least that is what I told myself. Turns out, she lied to me so that I wouldn't be divided anymore. But I didn't learn that until news went out about your crew. Now Usopp must hate me. Usopp doesn't hate you but he does miss you. I don't think he ever knew why you didn't come back. He doesn't want to let you down. He's always talking about how he has to be better so that he can be just like you. I think he is scared that you will hate him or be disappointed. But he's wrong, Luffy said adamantly. Usopp is the best. He's creative, funny and even though he is scared, he fights for his friends. You were wrong to leave him. He deserved to have someone fight for him. Even if there was another dad. He deserved all the love. Luffy started his speech staring down Usopp, but by the end he had drifted off to the railing and looked out to the sea. Usopp hesitated and then stepped up to the kid. You're right, he did deserve that and so did you. Luffy laughed. No, it's okay. I'm one of the people that everyone leaves. I'm good on my own. Usopp grabbed his shoulder and forced him to turn and look at him. No Luffy. Captain hated to leave you, knowing that he wouldn't be able to come back to the east for a long time. It killed him and Ben to not see you but we were trying to keep you safe. The Marines were starting to take notice of us, and as this whole escapade has shown, we do not do stealthy well. Anchor. Came the pained whisper from behind them and Luffy stiffened, eyes widening at the sight of Shanks. Usopp nodded at his captain and retreated to the stern of the ship to give them privacy. I'm so sorry Anchor. I'm sorry that you've ever been in a place where you doubted how people feel about you. This is really important so I need you to listen to me, okay? He paused and waited till Luffy nodded. You are my son and I love you. He laced his voice with his haki and let it cover the shaky boy in front of him. Luffy winced and tried to turn away but he gripped his chin firmly but gently. You are loved by my whole crew, by your brother and grandpa and you are so loved by me and your pa. My biggest regret in life is that I couldn't be there while you grew up. Yas was right when he said that we had to leave you. Sees, I think the crew was ready to mutiny dealing with us and our depression in the months after leaving. The first time you called us on the Den saved us. Telling us about new friends and adventures. You gave us a reason for celebrating after months of gloom. I wish I could have brought you with us but your safety has always been our top priority. The life of a pirate is hard and it's dangerous. You're leaving again, Luffy whispered. Not forever. Just long enough to go, check out the island and make sure it works for your training. Then we'll be back here with you. Not for long though. You're going back to New World. Anchor, you say the word and we bring you with us. Hell we will collect your whole crew and you can be trained by us. We may not have people that specialize in each of your crew's skill set but we are able to teach you the basics and we would keep you safe. Shanks said seriously. You could stay with us as long as you wanted. I'm going to be king of the pirates. Luffy said shaking his head. I can't be part of your crew. We're going to do it on our own. Shanks smiled sadly and placed the dangling hat back on his head. Yeah you are. And we're going to be waiting for you when you're done. And this time you're not going to be alone. You'll have your grandpa to teach you and we're going to stay in contact with the Den. And hey what's a couple more years after a decade of waiting? Luffy wrapped himself around Shanks tightly. Just wait dad. Couple more years and I'm gonna come and take you down. I can't wait, but don't think I'm going to go easy on you. Your dad's pretty tough you know and I've got a reputation to uphold. Pa would say your reputation could only be improved. Luffy said sniffing and Shanks laughed. Chapter 26. The island was weirdly quiet now that it was just Mihawk and the kids. The RH pirates had left with the two women and Rayleigh had slipped out to check on a possible lead that Shaggy had found for Chopper. It had actually taken Mihawk a couple hours to realize that he was the lone adult and so stuck with babysitting. Now come on Roronoa. It's not enough to just use brute strength. Try again. Mihawk directed as he watched Zoro face 4 human drills. They don't need anything fancy. I can take them out easily. Zoro whined back and Mihawk prayed for patience. Yes, you're starting off easy so you can learn the maneuver. Wouldn't do you much good if you were actually fighting to stay alive. He said yet again, before turning and tossing a ball at a blindfolded Luffy and Ace. They both grunted as the ball rebounded off their heads and Ace cursed at the stupid piece of sea stone sitting in his lap. Mihawk continued to observe the grumbling green-haired boy who was trying to remember the stupid footwork. Perona shrieked in frustration and continued her steady stream of complaints that Mihawk had completely ignored since she refused to put on a blindfold. In fact the only sign that he was aware of her presence was the hockey-covered arm that would casually sweep through the small ghosts that had been sneaking up behind him. He continued the training exercise for the next hour before calling it done and directing the kids to run a circuit of the island to cool down. The boys shrugged, starting to run after Luffy who excitedly challenged them to a race. He called after them that there would be no powers used before looking at the pouting girl. I do not run, she said firmly. If you don't want to join in the training, then I will be sure to put together a list of chores for you to do instead. He said challengingly. And why would I do those? It's bad enough I had to help clean half the castle the other day but I am not a maid. You cleaned the castle because you and the boys disobeyed a direct order and spied on things that didn't concern you. He reminded her, and you will either do chores or follow training. If not, you will be leaving. Nobody is staying here for free. He lifted a brow and stared her down until she huffed in annoyance and stomped after the boys. And remember a full lap with no powers. I am watching you. He smiled at the shriek of annoyance from behind him and sauntered in to start lunch. He sighed when the peaceful kitchen was interrupted by the boys arriving. First came Ace bursting into the hall and then Luffy slingshotting himself through his brother, smashing into the wall next to the kitchen. I won, Ace crowed. Nah, I touched the kitchen door first. Luffy shouted back, yeah but you used your powers. And that was against the rules so you're disqualified. I'm not. He said no using powers while running the lab. Not when we were in the castle. Sides you turned to fire when I went through you. Yeah so I didn't get trampled by you. Ace yelled back, cheater, menace. They started yelling and then Ace leapt on his brother, tumbling him over and they rolled around on the floor, trying to get the upper hand. Suddenly the two of them were doused in cold water and they yelped in shock. Mihawk stood over them annoyed. If you boys still have this much energy I am happy to assign you some fieldwork instead of lunch. No. Both boys shook their heads and tried to look contrite. They'd both had shifts helping to plant the year's crops and the monotony was deadly. Right, Luffy get the mop, Ace set the table. And where the hell is Roronoa? Shishishi. Zoro got lost again. He's so dumb. How did he possibly get lost? He was with you two and running in a circle. Luffy shrugged and Mihawk pinched the bridge of his nose in annoyance. Right, go and Finn. Don't bother. I found him already. Perona said as she yanked the swordsman in by the hand. Seriously how do you not know where the kitchen is after all this time? It's just pathetic by this point. It's not my fault someone keeps moving the kitchen. No one is moving the kitchen. That's just stupid. Were you dropped on your head as a baby? Mihawk sighed as he sent all the kids to wash their hands and then to the table. By now he was well practiced in blocking Ace and Luffy's wandering hands and he half-heartedly scolded them during the arguments that arose over the food. Pretending that he didn't see the way Zoro left a chunk of meat on the side of his plate for Luffy to steal. He sighed and debated chugging his wine, having finally seen the appeal in drinking like Shanks. Who knew kids were so exhausting? Zoro you're on dishes, Perona clear the table and help dry. The two of them grumbled, glaring at each other but he ignored them. Our next lesson will be in 3 hours. Behave until then. He went to stride out when he heard the familiar sound of the den, and not his private one. No interrupting me, he yelled out as he rushed to his office. Dracula Mihawk, we have a mission for you. Came the familiar voice of Sengoku. After wasting my time at Marineford, I do believe that I shall decline. Why don't you try Doflamingo? I hear he doesn't mind being an attack dog. As a member of the Warlords, it is your duty to fulfill a mission when ordered. So if you would like to continue enjoying the protection provided by the Marines I suggest you listen. Mihawk bit back to scoff at the thought of needing protecting. Seize, he wanted to tell the asshole where he could stuff it but he thought of the children currently running around his protected island and grit his teeth. He couldn't afford to lose his home base not now at least. Who am I disposing of? He ground out. There's a new upstart who's making trouble in the South Blue. You will leave immediately. Mihawk swore when the line was finally dropped. Why couldn't this call have come when the RH pirates were around O'Reilly? Well unfortunately he didn't have a choice. He'd have to trust that the kids wouldn't destroy the island in the few days it took for one of the others to return. Oh seize, his castle was doomed. Mihawk stared at the 4 kids who were standing on the dock as he loaded his boat. I swear to Davy Jones, if you destroy my castle, I will ensure you build it back brick by brick until it's perfect, after I remove your favorite arm from your bodies. Luffy giggled at the threat and Mihawk hissed in distress. Now I expect you 4 to continue your daily training and to clean up after yourselves. I will be calling every day. You will answer every time and I will expect to talk with all of you. Luffy stay out of the kitchen. Roronoa, I've locked the liquor cabinet and I know exactly what I have in there. Any sign of disturbance and you will not be getting any alcohol during your time here. Ace and Luffy, the castle is not designed to withstand fire or bodies through walls. Kindly control your powers or go outside. Perona, no torturing the others with your ghosts. Just because you are oldest does not mean they are your servants. The 4 kids nodded along obediently and he glowered. Red Hair has only arrived at the island today. He insists that they will be departing tomorrow but he is still several days away. Rayleigh is currently unreachable since he refuses to use a goddamn boat but he should be checking in sometime in the next couple of days. Let him know that I was called away but Shanks is likely to be back first. If anyone else arrives at the island stay hidden. I should not have to explain what would happen if anyone knew of your location boys. If someone is here and they get too close to your hiding place, send Perona to make a distraction. She at least is not actively being hunted. He took a breath and cursed quietly to himself. Never before has he felt this worried leaving. Curse Red Hair for bringing these kids into his life. Why the hell did he care so much? The very thought of what could happen to them without any supervision was making him nauseous. Train and take care of each other. There's first aid kits and fire extinguishers in every room. Behave. Perona sighed and then reached down, untying his ship and shoving it from the deck. "We got it. Go already." He nodded, taking a last look at their smug faces before moving his ship through the treacherous bay. He had just disappeared into the fog when he heard a loud whoop of excitement and his hockey picked up on the roughhousing behind him. "Gum Gum Twister," echoed through the fog and a shriek of surprise before a couple of splashes. Mihawk flinched, fighting the urge to turn around and yell at the kids. He reminded himself that they were all adults who had been on their own for months, if not years. And Roronoa had a lot of practice retrieving devil fruit users from the water. Besides, he really didn't have a choice but to keep going. Shanks was not having a good time, though to be fair, Ben was maybe having a worse one. He only had to deal with his panic and stress about his kid, Ben had to worry about him. He fought down his hockey that wanted to erupt and instead focused it on the sea in front of him. For once he was grateful that the calm belt was full of sea kings as his rage targeted the beasts, bringing several carcasses to the surface. Damn it. Fucking Pa and his good ideas. Oh, go on Red, it's just a quick trip. 7 days. The kids will be fine with Mihawk. Son of a bitch. Shanks cursed and a couple more sea kings appeared. Ben sighed and rubbed his eyes exhausted. Shanks, no one could have known Mihawk would be called away. He rarely is summoned. Do you know what kind of chaos could be happening there right now? And we are still 3 days away. What if the Marines show up? They're strong but they aren't ready to fight another admiral. Ben smacked him with a hockey-coated fist. You're spiraling. We spoke to them on the Den not even 2 hours ago. There is no reason for the Marines to go to Mihawk's territory, let alone an admiral. You don't know that. Shanks protested and Ben glared at him. Okay fine, it wouldn't make sense but this is Anchor. Nothing ever makes sense with him. Fine. Say for some strange reason, some Marines do end up there. They have to pass through a bay that is full of hidden perils. They have to make the trek through an inhospitable island full of human drills who are taught to attack trespassers, and then they have to face 4 kids, 3 of who have proven to be formidable fighters on their own and one with the power to send most enemies groveling in the dirt. Shanks grunted in return. Captain, they will be fine. They're probably just enjoying the freedom of no supervision. Shanks paled, before turning and rushing past his first mate. I'm going to call and check in on them again. Ben sighed and wondered if he should try hiding the poor Den. Buggy glared at the Den in front of him. It had been weeks and the damn thing refused to ring. Here he was, flashily risking his life, picking fights with Marines and enraging the government, and they were too busy to pick up the Den and check in on him. Hello. He deserved some acknowledgement for his bravery and sacrifice. He snarled at the sounds of screams and thuds upstairs and stormed up to the deck. Will you keep it down up here? Seriously, stop playing around with them and put them out of their misery already. He yelled, annoyed. Crocodile smirked at him as he exhaled his cigar. Nice of you to make an appearance, clown. The fight is almost over. As if I would waste my time with these nobodies. Buggy laughed, flying over to the Marine ship and raising his Jolly Roger on the mast. He grabbed one of the dying Marines. Now where would I find your treasure? The poor man choked out an answer and Buggy happily retrieved their stash before returning to his ship. Let's get out of here before their reinforcements arrive. They sailed off, leaving the Marine's ship broken and slowly sinking with its remaining crew. As soon as they were out of sight, Crocodile held out his hand and Buggy reluctantly dropped the treasure into his grip. Oh, don't look so blue, clown. You get the credit, I get the rewards. Crocodile opened the pouch and then tossed him a couple coins. So boss, where to next? Buggy sighed. We're going to have to do something big soon, but for now let's head for the South Sea. This one is getting a little full of Marines. He glared at the Den again. Damn it, he wanted to hear how the flashy brat was doing. Crocodile laughed. And are you finally going to man up and call for an update? Shanks made it very clear he doesn't want to hear from me. He muttered, turning away and leaving Crocodile with the spoils of their battle while he went to update the crew. Chapter 27. Ace cursed as he scanned for his annoying little brother. They'd been playing hide and seek for a couple hours now and the brat had disappeared. Despite the fact that he was better at observational hockey in a fighting sense, Luffy had the irritating ability to pick up on people's emotions and hide his own. Ace had already located Zoro and Perona, and they had retreated back to the castle, but Luffy was proving impossible to pin down. He could tell he was in the right area, but damn it. He was the one who taught the little punk how to hunt in the first place. He had been about to head off in another direction when he heard the sound of someone approaching. He grinned, assuming Luffy had finally gotten bored, but froze when an unknown male stepped into view. It was too late to hide, so he braced himself in a fighting pose. Who the hell are you? He snarled. The man stopped and hesitantly looked up, pushing up the brim of his top hat. Ace froze, staring at ice blue eyes that he knew. Eyes that haunted him for the last decade of his life. SS Sabo. He breathed. Hi Ace, I can explain. Sabo said awkwardly. Your Ace blinked, expecting the ghost to disappear. Instead his vision continued to darken. Sabo flinched as Ace moved in his direction. He braced himself for the punch that he knew was coming. Instead he watched in confusion as Ace collapsed to the ground. Ace. He stepped forward, concerned, when he heard a loud shriek from above. He looked up to see a blur rocketing toward him. Oh phoo. Sabo didn't even have time to brace before his younger brother torpedoed into his stomach, sending them both flying away from Ace. He landed hard, gasping desperately for oxygen that his lungs forgot how to inhale. He finally sucked in a mouthful of air and pushed himself upright, only to come face to face with a furious Luffy. Luffy glared at the intruder, carefully placing himself between him and his fallen brother. He had been hiding in a tree when he had seen the man approach, and though he hadn't made out what the man had done, Ace's crumpled form sent a wave of fury through him. No one was going to hurt his brother, not while he was around. He studied the blonde in front of him, noting the severe burns around his left eye and way he kept his right side towards him. He bared his teeth and launched a gum-gum pistol, forcing the man to dodge and weave around but unable to land a blow. He longed to fling his body after him, but he couldn't leave Ace unprotected, so fought the urge down. Instead, he distracted the man with a flurry of punches and kicks, and shot his left arm up, latching onto a thick branch and yanking hard, breaking it off the trunk and sending it plummeting at the man's head. He watched the guy dive out of the way, but the limb caught his lower body, and pinned his left leg. Luffy decided to end this quick so he could check on his fallen brother. He flung himself in the air, blowing up his arm to giant size as he shot back down, aiming at the trapped intruder. While Luffy came the panicked yell from Ace behind him. Luffy faltered and his arm wobbled, smashing the ground beside the man and rebounding off to knock over a tree which started to fall in their direction. There was a rush of movement and the tree stopped, hovering above them, trapped in a web of hands. Luffy beamed at the sight, spinning his head around 180 degrees to catch sight of Robin casually leaning against a nearby tree. "Robin, you're here," Luffy cheered, before whipping his head back around to look at the intruder. "Ace, are you okay? Was I not supposed to beat him up? He hurt you." Luffy, Ace paused, struggling for words as his focus stayed glued on the sprawled breathing form of his dead brother. "What the hell, Bo? Ace, Luffy, I can't believe you're both here. I'm sorry. Oh C's, I'm so sorry." Sabo pushed himself into a sitting position, still unable to look at his brothers. "I didn't want to leave you, I didn't mean to leave you, I lost my memories. But that doesn't excuse the fact that I was running off and sees Ace, you almost died. And Luffy." There was a choked sob. "Damn it, you idiots, haven't you learned any self-preservation skills? I could have lost you both before I even remembered. Before I had a chance to beg for your forgiveness." Sabo looked up at Ace, watery eyes desperately seeking to read his face. "Huh, Ace, who is this?" Luffy said, confused, looking back and forth at the two men who hadn't blinked. "What, you can't even recognize your big brother Lu? I guess that's to be expected. Look how much you've grown, OCs. Sabo squealed, finally looking at his little brother. "You're tiny. What just how are a JK Fosklege, I just wanna squish you. Ace, look." Luffy looked up at the two males, eyes flickering back and forth in confusion. "Big brother. Ace, I don't get it, what's he mean?" Ace. Luffy froze, looking at Ace, whose eyes were impossibly wide and focused entirely on him. Luffy gulped and took a hesitant step back as they pushed themselves to their feet. "Mine," shouted both older boys, lunging forward and shoving at each other. Luffy turned and bolted to Robin. "I call dibs," Sabo swore as Ace elbowed him hard. "You gave up your right to dibs when you died. You had 10 years with him, it's my turn." "No way, not when he's this adorable." Luffy hid behind a laughing Robin and gulped. "Oh man, time to go, Robin." He grabbed her hand and dragged her behind as he bolted through the trees. "Slow them down for me, Robin." "Sure thing, Captain," Robin said as she summoned extra arms to grab at their pursuers. "Shishishi, we have to hide till I grow again. Quick in here," he shouted, bolting into the castle and slamming on his brakes. "Oh shit," he said as he slid across the floor and crashed into Perona. Luffy fought to free his arms and plug his ears as the girl let out a high-pitched scream and squished him in her grip. Down the hall, a door flew across the hall and Zoro burst into the hall with his two swords out. He worriedly scanned the room, stopping when he picked out a struggling Luffy, getting spun around by a cooing Perona. He grunted and lowered his weapons before nodding at Robin and turning back to look at the destroyed doorway. "Aw shit, Mihawk's gonna be pissed. What did you have to scream for, stupid ghost witch?" Just then the front door flew open again and a bedraggled and singed Sabo raced through with a bleeding Ace right behind him. They locked eyes with the squealing girl who was still clutching a now bug-eyed Luffy. "Oi, give me back my brother," Ace demanded. "Our brother," Sabo snapped, stepping forward. Perona stared at the two boys defiantly, before sticking out her tongue and bolting for the stairs. She used her powers, summoning ghosts to fill the stairwell behind her. "Finders keepers. He's too cute." The boys howled in rage, glancing at each other and nodding, having reached an instant agreement to team up against this new threat to Luffy Cuddles. Both boys ran at the nearest wall, with Ace sliding into a crouch while Sabo leapt up, rebounding off and springing into Ace's ready clasped hands. Ace gave a strong toss and Sabo flew through the air, grasping the railing of the overlooking walkway. He then hung there while Ace turned and leapt up, grabbing his dangling legs and hauling himself up and over. "Go!" Sabo yelled as he began to hoist himself up and Ace disappeared down the hall. Zoro stared after them for a moment as they heard crashing and curses echoing. "Do you think we should help Luffy?" Robin laughed. I fear this battle is out of our league. Besides, I've got an eye and ear on him. Our good captain will be himself again any moment. Zoro shrugged, following Robin back into the library he had charged out of. He had missed her wry humor and was curious to hear about her journey. Luffy could handle himself. Sabo meanwhile shouted in triumph as he got a hold of one of Luffy's legs. Ace quickly grabbing on and helping him pull while Perona kicked at them. Luffy squirmed trying to break away, thankful that he was made of rubber as his legs stretched out. Then finally he felt his body pop back to normal size. Ah! The trio groaned in disappointment as Luffy cheered. Go small again, Perona demanded, shaking his shoulders. Nah, you guys are crazy, Luffy said, stretching his body and sprawling on the floor. Wait brother, he said looking back at the two guys. Ace smirked at him and Sabo wiped his cheeks. Sabo, Luffy said in awe and Sabo nodded softly. Next thing he knew, Luffy had flown at him and wrapped himself around his head, sobbing loudly. Sabu, you're alive, Ace snorted wetly. Took you long enough Lu. Aw Luffy, still a big crybaby aren't you? Sabo choked out, tangling his fingers in Luffy's vest and clinging desperately. He sunk down to the floor, as Luffy whimpered. I'm so sorry Luffy, I should have been there, I should have watched you grow. There was a loud wail and then sudden silence. Sabo, Luffy whimpered. Sabo med at him and Luffy sniffed. I finally beat you, hey you brat, just wait till next time. But seize Lu, you've gotten so strong. Luffy broke back into even louder sobs and clenched tighter. Ace watched his brothers fondly. He had never dreamed that he would get to see Sabo again and now here he was, comforting their cry-baby little brother the way he always should have, since he was obviously the nice, soft brother. Suddenly one of Luffy's arms untangled and dragged him into their hug and Ace grunted as he got Sabo's elbow in his gut. Still he let Luffy envelop him in his limbs and buried his face in Sabo's shoulder. Ace didn't know what had happened to Sabo, what he had been doing the last 10 years or why he had never returned, but that didn't matter right now. Right now he had the two most important people in his life, safely ensconced in his arms. Questions and the ass-kicking Sabo deserved would come later. Chapter 28. Shanks relaxed slightly as the familiar island appeared on the horizon. They were almost there and thank the sea, the island wasn't on fire, sunk or destroyed. In fact, in the light from the moon, it looked untouched. Could it be that the four kids had managed not to cause chaos in 4 days alone? His haki flared out, focusing on the familiar presence of Anchor and Ace, noting that they were in a deep sleep and that the only alert presence in the castle was Perona, who had always been a night person. He had expected that, it was very late and if it wasn't for his concern for the kids, his crew would have anchored for the night hours ago. In fact he probably owed them all a few nights of freedom for the way he pushed them on this trip. Ben stepped up beside him, smoking on his cigar. I told you that you were overreacting. But no, you've become a big mother hen. He said dryly. Mother hen. Just because I was concerned about the kids getting in trouble does not make me a mother hen. Shanks protested. Cease, at least call me something impressive. I'm understandably protective of my danger magnets, if anything I'm a mama bear. Ben looked at his captain, waiting for the moment of realization. When it hit, Shanks drooped in defeat. Papa Bear. He looked at his friend hopefully before sighing. You're not gonna drop that one, are you? Drop what, Mama Bear? Ben smirked. Right, I'll have you know that most captains get some respect from their crews. Some crews have respectable captains. What must that be like? Ben said laughing as Shanks sent a half-hearted blow at him. Come on Captain, let's go check on our little troublemakers so that you might actually get some sleep tonight. I've slept. Shanks grumped and Ben just raised an eyebrow. I've gotten 1 or 2 hours a night. He defended himself. Exactly Shanks. You are dead on your feet. Quick check in on the boys and then straight to bed. You're going to want to be fully rested for Anchor tomorrow. Ben assigned the night watch before jumping to land with Shanks. The rest of the crew deciding to crash on ship so that they didn't disturb the kids. They entered the castle and sent a nod at one of Perona's ghosts that was floating nearby, glad to see there was some security measures in place. Though the boys were all offered their own rooms, they'd chosen to stay together so there was only one stop to make. They carefully swung the door open and slipped in. Shanks smiled as he took in the scene. Zoro was sprawled on top of the covers on one side of the bed, cuddling his swords in one hand and wearing the old straw hat. Luffy's head was resting on Zoro's chest, his body squished between his first mate and the quilt-covered snoring lump that was his brother. Shanks stepped up and adjusted the quilt to cover the 6 feet hanging out the bottom and untangled Luffy's one arm that had somehow twisted around himself in a knot. Ben meanwhile had fetched another blanket and had spread it over Zoro's legs. They moved to the door when Shanks froze. He spun back around and untucked the feet again. 2, 4, 6, 8. Ben, why is there 8 feet in this bed? Ben whipped off the blanket and stared at the 4 boys in the bed. Horrified by the blonde who had an arm wrapped around a curled-up Ace and Luffy. Shanks, there's a boy in Anchor's bed. He shouted, hands hovering as he tried to figure out how to extract the rubber boy. P.A. Came a sudden yell from the bed and Luffy dove at Ben. The blonde cursed as he got a foot in the face and Zoro rolled off the bed, mumbled Luffy's name before passing back out. Ben instantly caught the kid and moved behind Shanks, eyeing the unknown child. Ace blinked tiredly and looked up at them. Lou, it's still dark. What are you? Oh, you're back. Well, Yan, you can get him back asleep then. He rolled back over, burying his head in Sabo's shoulder. Ace, who the hell is this? Shanks asked, exasperated, trying to pull the grumbling boy away. Shanks, can't we do this in the morning? I'm tired. Ace groaned. No, we can't do this in the morning. You have a stranger in your bed. Shishishi. That's not a stranger. That's Sabo. Luffy exclaimed as he tried to climb out of Ben's restrictive grasp. Pa, I'm hungry. We should go hunting. Robin says that the human drills have night guards that sleep during the day, so they fight completely different. Plus the dark will make it harder to see, so maybe I can show you my observation haki. Or we can go look at the stars and you can tell me stories. Or, Anchor, we're excited to see you too, but it is late. We're going to bed, as soon as you tell us who the hell this is. Ben said, struggling to keep Luffy in his grasp. I told you, that's Sabo. Luffy said again, and I'm not tired anymore. Ben looked at Shanks, concerned and confused. Shanks thought for a moment before the name clicked in his brain. Anchor, wasn't Sabo your brother who died? But he's not dead anymore. He had ammonia and didn't remember. But then he saw the news and remembered, and he came with Robin to see us. Amnesia. Wait, Robin. Nico Robin. She's here too. Yeah, Sabo was with Robin and my dad. 'Cause Dragon Dad saved him and took care of him. But he missed us, so he decided to come and let Ace beat him up so that we could be brothers again. But we were already brothers. And Ace fell asleep, so I beat him up instead. All of your worrying and you missed the fact that there were 2 more people on the island. Ben glared at Shanks. So much for your observation haki. Hey, you could have checked the island too. Besides, they were sleeping. I was checking for alert consciousness. Shanks defended himself. The blonde gave a tired groan before jumping to his feet and giving a perfect bow. Hello, Emperor Red Hair, Shanks and First Mate Ben Beckman. My name is Sabo and I am the not-so-deceased brother of these 2. I lost my memory after being shot upon by a celestial dragon and was raised in the Revolutionary Army. I recently regained my memories after seeing news articles about my brothers, and after piecing together their location from their conversation with Nico Robin, I made my way here in order to reconnect. Thank you for saving Luffy as a child, and thank you again for saving both Ace and Luffy recently. Without your actions I would never have gotten to see them again and explain. It was a very emotionally draining day and I owe you a great debt. He straightened up and then glared at them. Now shut up and let us go back to sleep. Please, whined Ace, head buried under the pillow. Ben looked at Shanks worriedly and gripped Luffy tighter. Guys, seriously, nice to see you, but get out. Zoro grumbled from half under the bed. Midnight snack? Luffy asked, peering up through his eyelashes. Sure, Anchor, Ben said, interrupting Shanks. Then why don't you stay with Shanks tonight? I know he was missing your cuddles. Luffy lit up and beamed at his dad. Yay, food. And sleepover. Shanks swallowed back his denial and watched as Luffy raced out of the room. Aren't you the one says I'm too soft with him? Who's always going on about keeping to an eating schedule and not indulging him? Shank pouted at his friend and caught the pillow that was thrown from the bed. Alright, we're going, but we will be getting the full story in the morning, he warned as Luffy's arms shot in and tugged them towards the kitchen. The 2 men watched as Luffy started to inhale the food in the kitchen. You know, he would have been fine staying with the boys tonight. Shanks said quietly. We don't know that boy. Ben said firmly. Yeah, but Luffy and Ace do. And you know that Ace wouldn't let anyone near Anchor that he didn't trust. Well, yes, but I would like to have a conversation or two with someone before I want them sleeping with my kid. Shanks smirked and Ben shook his head in disgust. You know what I mean. Yeah, I do, but we weren't there when Anchor grew up. He's had plenty of sleepovers with people we don't know. Hell, we only recently met anyone on his crew. It's not fair to him for us to start doubting his ability to read people. Ben grumbled for a second before sighing. You're right. Wow, wait, say it again. I need a tone dial or something. We need to memorialize this. You never admit when I'm right. Maybe this is the first time. Ben snarked. I'm not saying it again. But I know I'm overreacting. It just took me by surprise is all. Shanks snorted. Well, I guess you were due for a freak out. After all, I've had several since we picked up the brat. But why's it got to be my bed? Please, you'll sleep better with the kid next to you anyways. Ben said fondly and then froze. Ah damn, we're going to have to do some serious hunting tomorrow or the kids are going to kill us. Shanks looked up and winced at the empty fridge and the boy who had blown up like a ball. Oops. Chapter 29. Shanks was still asleep when his haki pinged. He rolled over, whipping the pillow behind him, gathered Luffy in his arm and flipped off the bed, settling the blinking boy on his feet and smirking at the awestruck boys standing at the other side. Okay, that was cool, Zoro said, looking back at the pipe that Ace had smacked into the now empty bed. Ace blinked in shock for a second before dropping the pillow on the bed and glaring at the redhead. We're hungry and somebody didn't monitor Luffy's snack last night. Shanks yawned and glared at the boys. It's barely dawn, boys. Can't this wait till a decent hour? Ah, I'm sorry, were you sleeping? Came a sugary sweet voice from the doorway and the blonde boy appeared. How rude of us to come wake you up. Ace grinned menacingly. Yeah, don't you just want to smack someone when they wake you up? Shanks bared his teeth in return. I know I do. Why don't you bring it on, boys? Ace laughed and sent flares of fire to blind him while Sabo leapt across the bed, swinging his pipe at Shanks' center. Shanks shut his eyes and blocked the pipe with a hockey-covered arm, jumping over Zoro's swing and flipping back onto the bed. He laughed as he casually dodged their flurry of attacks and then struck out, disarming Ace and using his pipe to catch Zoro's sword. Shanks swung back, the force sending Zoro into the wall and kicked out at the leaping Sabo. He wrapped his arm around Ace, hauling him close and using his body to shield from the two other huffing boys. Ah, brats, I missed you. But you're going to have to do better than that if you want to catch me. Shanks teased, ignoring the heat building in his grip. Suddenly a pair of arms shot from behind him and cinched his arm to his body, releasing Ace. Get him! Luffy shouted and suddenly Sabo dove at him, taking him down to the mattress and perching on his stomach. Shanks kicked out, almost managing to unseat Sabo when Zoro dove over his legs. Shishishi. Got you, Dad. Betrayed. My own son. Shanks yelled out, squirming in their grip. What were you saying, Emperor? Ace laughed as he stepped up beside the bed. Now hold still for a minute. Shanks' eyes widened as the boy leant over him with a marker. Wait one Seiko, he squawked, squirming, but the grinning boys tightened their holds as Ace began to doodle. Ben, help me. Ben coughed from the door and the boys all froze, guiltily looking at him. He cocked an eyebrow and Ace smiled tentatively. Hey there, Ben. Ben walked over and plucked the pen from Ace's hand, before looking at his captain and TS King. Captain, taken out by 4 teenagers. How the mighty have fallen. The boys beamed at him and he bent over, adding his own doodle to Shanks' cheek as his captain gasped in betrayal. Now kids, I know you're having fun, but Mihawk is going to kill you when he sees the damage. He said sternly. The boys looked around, wincing as they noted the burn marks and dents in the wall from their little brawl. You all know better than to roughhouse in here. Next time, take it outside. Now I know you guys are hungry, so let's head to the Red Force for breakfast and we'll let Shanks go for a hunt to restock. The boys all cheered and Shanks pouted. Hey, stop bullying me. Why do I have to go hunting? Don't worry Shanks, we'll do the hunting. Ace patted his chest roughly as Sabo clambered off the bed. We want to actually get enough to eat. Shanks squawked again. Rude. I'm a great hunter. Bet you that my catch will beat yours. Sabo challenged Ace, eyes bright. I wanna help too. Luffy squirmed his arms out from underneath Shanks. I bet mine will be better than both of you. Ace snorted. Like that will ever happen, Lou. A little baby like you. Yeah, Luffy. Be reasonable. There's no way you're beating us. Sabo grinned. I will too. Just wait and see. I'm going to catch so much. Luffy stomped his foot before shooting himself at Zoro, who expertly caught the smaller boy and flipped him onto his back. Come on, Zoro. First we eat and then we kick their asses. Yes, Captain, Zoro said with a sharp grin before slipping out of the room. Race you to the ship. Zoro, you're going the wrong way. Came Luffy's shout as they disappeared down the hall, his two brothers racing after them laughing. Shanks groaned, still sprawled on the bed. Ben, I think I'm old. You can't be old, Captain, or I would have to be ancient. Nah, you're just out of shape. I've told you that you need to stop drinking so much. Ben grabbed his arm and pulled him up. Rude. Cease, don't tell Rayleigh about this. He'd kick my ass and force us through his hockey lessons, and let me tell you Ben, his are so much worse than yours. Really? Ben asked. Wonder if he would give me some pointers. I'd hate to think I'm letting you guys slack on your abilities. Please don't even joke about it, Benny. Shanks shuddered in horror and Ben stared at him. Ben, you're joking, right? That's a joke. Ben, Robin, Perona, breakfast on the ship. Ben called out, trailing after the shouting boys. Ignoring Shanks, who was chasing after him shouting. Chapter 30. Shanks sipped on his coffee as he watched the chaos in front of him. Oh sees, there were 3 of the bottomless pits now, and for all of Sabo's manners, the boy ate just as viciously as his brothers. In fact, witnessing this meal was enough to assuage any doubts he had about their relationship. Robin had wisely carried off a couple plates to the other side of the deck with Perona and Ben while Zoro threw himself into the melee. Shanks had grabbed an apple in his coffee and backed away to a safe distance with a laughing Lucky. Yeah, laugh it up. Shanks said wryly. Lucky snorted. Have you seen your face, Cap? Unfortunately. Seems the brats found a permanent marker. I'm just glad Luffy was around to keep it appropriate. Sees knows what you jerks would have written on me. Oh yeah, this is going to give Yasop ideas for the future. I particularly enjoy the mama bear. Shanks swore revenge on his traitorous first mate before changing the subject. Thanks for having this ready for us so early, Lucky, but I hope you hid some for the crew after. Shanks winced as Ace slammed a knife into the table, right between Sabo's outstretched fingers. Lucky chortled. Don't worry, I was prepared for the monsters. Though there is a couple more than I was expecting. You and me both. Ben almost had a coronary last night when we found them. Actually, hey boys, how about the explanation now? How did these two find you? Ace and Luffy looked at each other and then shrugged. Don't know, they said simultaneously. Shanks faltered for a second. What do you mean you don't know? Two people show up on the island you're hiding on and you don't question how. It's Sabo and Robin, Luffy said distractedly, trying to grab some bacon from Sabo's plate. They just know stuff. Ace, Zoro, Shanks questioned desperately hoping for some sanity. Doesn't matter. Luffy was happy to see them and he trusts Sabo. Zoro said easily, blocking Ace from Luffy's plate. Ace blushed. They only got here last night. I did ask but then I got distracted by Mini Luffy. Then Lou got all weepy about seeing him and we kind of just crashed. Perona, Horo, who cares about them? Luffy was so adorable. Shanks thunked his head against the wall. See Ben, I was not being dramatic. We're lucky they survived here alone. Ben Winston looked desperately at the kids for some sign that they were joking. He tried to decide if he should scold them or move on when the den began to ring. Ben went to pick it up when it disappeared into familiar stretched out arms. Lou, he started to interject when the boy answered. Monkey D. Luffy, I'm gonna be king of the pirates. Ben facepalmed and Shanks went back to smacking his head against the wall. You idiot, that's not Mihawk's secure den. Ace yelled, smacking Luffy's head and grabbing the snail. Oh cease, you are both still idiots. They can hear you. Give the snail to Ben before you get us all killed. Sabo glared at his brothers who sheepishly passed the snail over to Ben. When we are done talking I want you all to go run 3 laps of the island. Rayleigh said dryly on the other end and Ben thanked the seas while Shanks sighed in relief. I also expect a lecture on secrecy and den protocol. If I was an enemy I would know that not only were Luffy and Ace on your ship but also that they had at least spent time at Mihawk's Island. Right boys, you heard Rayleigh. Shanks stated. Oh Red, I said all of you. Oh come on, I didn't do anything. Shanks whined. Exactly brat, you just sat there while they did something stupid. Now pass the snail back to the kids. Luffy beamed as he shot over to his paw. Hey Papa Ray, I beat all the others at hide and seek yesterday. And I managed to dodge 5 balls in a row with my hockey. And Robin is here. That's great Luffy. I'm glad to hear you guys are training. How about the others? Mihawk gave me a bunch of drills to do while he was gone. But I beat all the human drills who would do drills with me. Zoro complained. And none of these guys are any good with a sword. Rayleigh was silent for a second. What do you mean while he was gone? Where did Mihawk go? He was called in by the Navy. Ace said quietly and Rayleigh fought back a smile. Ace was finally allowing some interaction without any prompting. A second later his words sunk in and Rayleigh felt a wave of panic. He left you guys. What was he thinking? You guys are all acting like we barely survived. You do know that I practically raised Luffy on my own when I was 10. And Luffy has been alone or captain of his own crew since he was 14. We do have some survival instincts. Ace reminded them. Barely. I don't know how you survived and that was before you guys managed to make enemies with the strongest people in the world. Shanks said glumly. Anyways Pa, we're back now and everything seems okay. Oh your grandkids did somehow sneak 2 new brats in. You collected more strays. I will have to warn Whitebeard that you're coming for his role if this keeps up. Now tell me about my new grandkids. Are they staying for training? Sorry Pa, I don't think either is in need of a new parent and they aren't hanging out for long. One of them is part of Anchor's crew and the other is his big brother, who he hasn't seen for a decade. Nope, too late. I've decided they're mine now. Which reminds me, give Luffy the phone. Luffy, I've got a surprise for you. Wow, a surprise. What is it? Is it meat? Luffy said already drooling. You've just had breakfast Anchor. Ben scolded fondly. Well it's not meat but I think you'll enjoy it anyways. Luffy, I was so scared. Are you okay? Rayleigh said you were injured. Chopper, wailed Luffy. I should have been there to fix your injuries. I'm your doctor and you got hurt. Chopper whimpered. No Chopper, it's my fault you weren't there. I let us get separated and didn't protect us. Luffy insisted. But I'm going to find everyone and we're all going to get so strong that no one will be able to split us apart ever again. I'm training every day. Luffy, you better be listening to the doctor. You need to heal first. I want to talk to the doctor. Came the demand from the suddenly stern reindeer. Zoro had quietly moved beside Luffy and smiled at the scolding from their youngest member. Don't worry Chopper, we were both sufficiently warned about overdoing it. Seriously, we were on bed rest for forever. But the doctor says we're good to go now. Zoro, you two actually listen to the doctor. Now I really need to talk to him. Shishishi. Well Dad and Pa and Uncle Hockey were really mean about it. And Hongo is scary when he gets mad. But we missed you. That doesn't make me happy at all, you big dummies. And I can be scary too, just you wait. You'll follow my orders when I'm around. Chopper squealed, making the two smile. Where did you end up Chopper? Are you safe? Luffy asked, leading Chopper to talk about stupid humans trying to eat him and befriending giant birds. Luffy interrupted at this point. What? Giant birds? Get one for our crew. That would be so awesome. Which led to Robin lecturing him on wild animals. Eventually they had to say goodbye to their little doctor who decided to stay on his island to continue learning but they promised to get him in contact with Hongo soon. After they hung up Luffy glumly cuddled up with Ben. Perona studied him for a moment before joining them and shoving her beloved Kamashi doll in his arms. Here, hold this and don't wreck it. And don't think you are getting to hold it cause I care. I just don't want to put it down on this dirty deck, okay? Luffy beamed, squeezing the toy tightly and wishing he was snuggling with his fluffy doctor instead.